I'm thrilled to be here. I am Jeremy Kauffman. I am the founder and the CEO of LBRY, LBRY. And LBRY is the freest way to create, discover, share, distribute, and purchase information online. And this is a blockchain channel, so I'm guessing you guys have talked about some of the issues with YouTube already. People don't know,
Yeah.
but there's a very clear need to take back control over our ability to create and share, and put it back in our hands instead of a small group of people in Silicon Valley, choosing how we're gonna do these kinds of things. So I've already kind of jumped right into my whole thing. I didn't really talk about myself. I did found another software company before this, comparatively boring but decently successful software startup in the sport and activity registration space. I've been in blockchain for, I guess probably around 6 years. And had this idea to use blockchain for this digital content use case. Couldn't stop thinking about it, and me and a couple other people, started hacking at it, and here we are. 4 to 5 years after that happened, and LBRY, I think, has really become one of the predominant, if not the predominant, alternatives to YouTube. And as we'll possibly get into, what LBRY is trying to do is actually even bigger than that in terms of what we're trying to do. So, but that's a good starting place.
It is, and you actually touched already upon a couple of points that I wanted to, expand on. So first of all, yeah, of course, LBRY actually for our own very podcast, the other co-founder of Blockchain Rock, Noelle, she's the one that found LBRY, and we started using it as an alternative platform to YouTube for to share the content. Now, you mentioned that we need to take back control when it comes to creating and sharing content, right? So let that be the first question. What exactly do you mean when you say take back control on how we create? Is that because
Great. I love it. And let me say, I am not someone while I have developed my buzzwords and my type phrases, because that's my job, I can there's always substance behind them. Okay, this is not a flashy project. Okay, like LBRY is the opposite. It's something that's very substantive that we've worked to get better at communicating. So what does that mean? Control. Okay, so one of the most fundamental differences in LBRY is that you, as a publisher, have the ability to have your identity and the control of that identity and the entire publishing experience in your local control. And it's really the same. And as anyone into blockchain and Bitcoin, this is something you get, right? It's the difference between saying the money is mine and in my wallet, and I control whether I spend it, and I control if it's taken from me, and I have the risks along with that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Or I can choose the third party I trust. I can use Coinbase, or I can use other things, right? But that's still much better than the sort of centralized world where you're trapped in one place, and that's the key difference with LBRY. So a lot of people use LBRY through LBRY.tv. And actually, if you're watching this on YouTube, I should encourage you to hop over to LBRY right now. Just the same video is going to be on both places, right? So just go over to that timestamp, pick it up over there, right? You can try using it immediately. But LBRY.tv in LBRY land, right? That's just a Coinbase. That's just a web-based way of using LBRY. LBRY is actually a decentralized peer-to-peer protocol that provides this entire end-to-end functionality that's quite similar to YouTube or Amazon. And we've tried user experience-wise to get as close as we can off of the team that we have to these products. We're not trying to be at the cutting edge of user interface. We're we'll just copy the billionaires, right? But
which is basically UX design done right. That's what you should do. You should take what people are accustomed to and implement it yourself while creating difficulties.
We're not afraid to make some small changes for our use case, but we're not trying to be at the bleeding edge. We're not trying to be at the bleeding edge of anything, quite frankly. We're at the bleeding edge of Web 3.0 digital content. We're not trying to be the world's foremost blockchain innovators. We'll let the Bitcoin guys do that. right? We'll pay
Yeah.
attention. I'm not trying to say we don't know what's going on, right? I think we're good at what we do, right? We have some really talented engineers, but we're not saying let's be at the frontier of consensus algorithms. We're saying let's be at the frontier of getting people to use a Web 3.0 app, these blockchain based apps.
So adoption, basically,
Yeah,
that's your mission.
yes, and there's a place I would claim that LBRY is at the frontier of actual end users using a blockchain application for real reasons, right? Like not just because number go up, right? But because like this is serving a need. There are uh, blockchain creators. There are all kinds of creators, science creators, LGBTQ creators, gamers are getting crushed on YouTube. It's crazy. Like, like
When you mean
YouTube.
crash,
I mean, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, just when you say crash, what do you mean exactly? Do you mean
I
on
mean,
the monetization side of things,
they're
or
being treated unfairly. They're having videos be
okay?
either taken down or demonetized in ways that just aren't right.
Here's
And
my question.
yeah,
I have a question. Sorry, before
yeah,
before we move ahead. So you mentioned that coupling together a few points that you've made. So you said, of course, that library is decentralized,
yeah,
and that people take back control and they also take back risks. Now, normally, I guess part of why some of those videos that get demonetized, sometimes it comes down to whether they use the certain song without having the permission, or if the content is deemed unacceptable based on the term and condition of the platform. So user generated content is a major challenge for online platform and internet service providers. So when you say that the user takes back control, and with it takes also risk, and that the platform is centralized, how does that relates to user generated content? What is the responsibility the library has? Because I assume that you can't really have the content on a blockchain, because otherwise everyone would have to download the ledger, which is infinite in
yeah,
terms of
yes,
data.
yes. Yeah. So very good question, and very also a very astute observation. Of course, the content is not on the blockchain. So let me maybe let me explain the tech first, and then let's come back to the DMCA question of like
Mhm.
the infringing content question. Okay, I'm not trying to avoid that, but we should get through
No,
like
of
how it
course, of
works.
course.
Yeah. So and that's also my fault. I think I jumped back into. I've been on like this like YouTube sucks, YouTube sucks, YouTube sucks crusade. So like I'm just trying to like take everything back there, probably without even realizing it. How does library work? So yes, the content is not in the blockchain. What we've done is so BitTorrent would be like well known
Yeah,
to
yeah, I
yeah.
would say so.
So
Yeah.
okay, library was actually conceived of as solving BitTorrent, right? BitTorrent had three problems as we saw it. It had the problem of discovery, right? There's no decentralized catalog. It had the problem of incentive. It works because people are nice or don't understand what they're doing, more likely, and it was never legitimately successful in the sense it was legitimately technologically successful, but it was never a place where people were not that many, not no one, but not that many people were really leading with I'm going to publish on BitTorrent. So with a blockchain, we can add identity, we can add payment to help solve the legitimization. All of the database of what's available is in the blockchain. So now we can leverage that to solve the discovery, and we can also marketize the data aspect of it as well. And so that is what LBRY is designed to be: is this decentralized network that provides digital content discovery and purchase. The
Okay, so it's a
blockchain is just
catalog. It's
it's
almost
just
like
the
a
metadata.
catalog
Yeah,
on.
it's just
Okay.
yeah, exactly. It's the catalog, it's identity, it's payments, it's metadata. Okay, and then that metadata is we use basically so this gets into we'll talk through the specifics. So let's get into the different ways you can use LBRY in terms of understanding it. So because LBRY.tv, that's a website, that's the Coinbase version. Everything works the same in that place. It's not that different. We're not promising if someone tells you that a website, you say, oh, there's this great decentralized protocol, and then you say, how do you use it, and they give you a domain name, and that domain name does not like lead you to download a peer-to-peer client or some sort of decentralized client, right? Like you're not really in a decentralized network. So LBRY built that. We only launched LBRY.tv in November. We'd been working on the peer-to-peer network for years, right? That was already there. That was already built. LBRY.tv has surged tremendously. The desktop client is coming along with it, but the desktop client was there first. So if you want that desktop peer-to-peer experience where you're in full control. You have more obligations. You also have more risk. You also have more control. You go and you get that desktop client. Now there's LBRY.TV, which for a lot of people, they might think of it as like, just like YouTube. It's very user friendly to get into. Not that the desktop one is like bad, but websites are easier than desktop apps, right? That's not surprising. And so we have this continuum of experiences, and that also relates to how the DMCA stuff is handled. So on the website, it's basically exactly the way that you would expect. We process DMCAs, we put them on a list of what's not allowed, right? Because we can't actually update the blockchain records. But once they're on that list, LBRY.TV is not going to serve them. And then on the desktop client, it depends on what wallet server you're connected to. Because in the desktop client, unless you're running a full blockchain node, you're in that Bitcoin wallet server SPV land, right? We have a thin wallet and you're connecting to a wallet server that's relaying to the network for you, right? Like if you use a wallet on your cell phone, like a local wallet, it's relying on a wallet server to relay your transactions to the network. Same model exists in our desktop clients, and if those servers are run by us, they're not going to return any illegal metadata. If they're run by someone else, we recommend that those entities observe our lists, but we can't force them to. But they do get them; they have access to them. If they're running in another country where they're not legally obligated to abide the U.S. law, which should be, of course, their right, they don't have to abide our blacklist.
Do you see a future where, because like I assume, right, that true lack of authority stems from basically the lack of human involvement. So do you think that one day someone very much in the fashion like Satoshi developed Bitcoin would create basically an independent platform where anyone can share every type of content and everything, and just basically remaining completely anonymous? So
Well,
the thing is,
I think LBRY already does that. I don't think anonymity is required to create that technology. Look, HTTP already lets you share whatever you want.
yeah,
SMTP already lets you email something
yes,
anything that you want. Like it's all we're not censored at that level. There isn't a place where the internet already works that way, right?
but you can incur
LBRY
in
is
liabilities.
a
That's why I'm
twist.
saying it.
Uh,
But
Sorry.
you could like, I completely understand what you mean, where you're coming from. What I'm trying to say is that if there is someone that could be accountable, sometimes it's a positive thing, because of course for a customer it's good to have someone
Yeah.
that is accountable.
Look,
But
it's possible. The government can always pass new laws, right? I think
yeah,
LBRY is completely legal today, obviously, and we've gone under extensive legal consultation on those matters. But the government could pass a new law and make
oh, no,
LBRY
no, no, no,
illegal.
I wasn't meaning that. Apologies. No, 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 I didn't explain
No,
myself.
no, no.
No, no.
I'm not saying you're saying that what we're doing is legal. I'm saying that like the there's no need. Like I understand why, or can imagine reasons why. Satoshi or other people who do these things like want to remain anonymous. Satoshi didn't do anything illegal. He didn't need to. Like
Yeah.
it's not like if he was known, he would be arrested right now. I'm sure federal agents would have had some conversations with him, right?
For sure.
I don't think he would be in jail. I don't think
Despite Silk Road, no, I know that he's not. I
Silk
know
Road.
that
Sure,
it's
you do
completely
illegal things
unrelated.
on top of it. So that's the thing is we shouldn't. It's we go through this weird. It's not weird. It's natural. But there's this reaction to new technology where we're like, it's going to make things so much. Things are going to be way, way, way different, and then like some people want to clamp down on it, and it's like
Yeah.
sometimes they're right or wrong if about making things different. They're never right about clamping down on it. It never
I
works.
agree with
It
you one
never
million
happens.
percent. I
And so
completely
we're
agree
way
with you.
better
Yeah.
off just like updating to, okay, this is a thing now. You can't put genies
Yeah.
back in the bottle. So like let's go after the people who do illegal stuff. If
Yeah.
IP infringement is going to be something that the government enforces, go after the IP infringers.
Yeah.
Right? Go after the people that are doing the wrong things.
But
I
I
think
see
it
the
makes way
library
more
could
sense to focus
become.
on that. Yeah.
I think the library actually could come. My specialization is actually AP, and actually I believe that blockchain could solve a big problem, because IP at the moment, yes, of course you have rights, but go and enforce them first of all if you're the right holders, right? So and on the other end, it gives, claims to people that, like the first time that the major label, back in early 2000, I think, tried to enforce, a copyright law. I think it was in the States, against a person downloading music. They just went based on traffic, and it ended up having a claim of like millions of dollars against 16 years old. So there is it's disproportionate and it's not practical. But I think the blockchain could make it practical, because you can avoid, first of all, the copy and paste dilemma. You can allow to people, like LBRY does, to get a reward for their work and their creation, but at the same time, you're not stifling, the adoption. You're not. It's so much more organic the way it flows.
I completely agree. Look, I hope I maybe I made the mistake of getting too defensive. Like, I think library is going to be wonderful for art and creation.
I
Like,
agree with you.
freer exchange almost always is, almost always creates more creativity, more art, more engagement. And I think anyone, in fact, look, talk to any creative person. Like, it's the nature of creativity that it's from human beings feeding off of each other. Not that many
Yes.
people are these like
Nothing is
lone.
original.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
is
yeah,
inspired by
yeah.
the
Look, yeah.
other. Yeah, it's
Right. I'm literally at this point, I suppose, and I'm not trying to like to have my own horn. I am technically, but I'm technically like a published inventor or whatever. And it's like, it does. I don't even feel like one. I'm like, I just glued three things together other people did, and like made some logical choices on top of that. And it's, but I think that's actually a lot of creation. You
Of
know.
course, but that
So
I believe that that's creation. My,
yeah.
before I became a lawyer, I was a sound engineer, and I was in the creative industries. So, and I completely agree with you. I think the creative process basically just stems from experiences plus influences plus, getting inspiration, and maybe a tiny bit of like, I think that's your creative spark, is take mixing things that another person would have not mixed in the same way, because everything already exists. Let's not lie to ourselves. So I do think that it's almost like a puzzle, way maybe a different perspective, a different background. I don't know. Maybe you were exposed to certain popular culture. Another person might have other influences. So no, I completely agree with you. I think that sharing is at the very core of creativity. And if
Yeah.
you look at it, actually, I think when a country becomes, usually a lot of creativity comes from a time of desperation, and a time of desperation, what happens is that people don't really cling to property over artistic creations. They just share them. If you look at Germany, for example, during the Cold War, or if you look at Detroit, when they closed all of the factories down, that's where like new music came up from, and it's because people were just sharing everything. So no, I completely agree with that. Moving on, I wanted to ask you another thing. Is there are there other technologies that you're excited about? I'm, for example, very excited about mixed reality. Is it
Yeah.
something that you see synergy?
A couple of things that I would be. I guess I'll talk mainly about the blockchain space. Although if I think bigger
Of
picture,
course.
there's probably some other things. I mean, I think one, just like I guess the two of the biggest ones are like futures markets, like auger style things. I think that is something that will be like genuinely beneficial for the world. I think the more people bet their beliefs, the more we get accurate information. And the fact that it's essentially like effectively like illegal to have markets where people are betting on future events, I think like we effectively lack there's not as much of an incentive to produce accurate information about the future, right? And I think it would be it could be a genuinely big, really big thing. Another thing would be
Sorry,
just
would that fall just very quickly to, because I know that we don't have much time, but I'm very curious. It's actually really interesting. No one really brought this up before. Do you think that would fall more under gambling or under financial services, as sort, or a mix between the
uh,
two?
what was the alternative to financial services?
Gambling, so online
Yeah, oh no,
gambling,
no,
for
definitely
example.
not gambling. Oh no, absolutely not. Life is betting on the probability of future events, right? I'm already participating in a futures market with my choices. Like, so
Yeah.
allowing, it's the same kind of idea of like allowing this to be more more liquid and so on. Um, and I think it's crazy. Look, compare the betting markets to, political pundits. The betting markets on political outcomes to political pundits. I think that the consensus is that like the markets do much better than pundits, and it shouldn't surprise us that markets do better than pundits. So let's get markets for things like what's the temperature of the world going to be in 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like that would be a useful market prediction to know what the markets are saying. And instead we're stuck with implicit second order measurements, like based off of the movements of other equities and so on, to like try to guess what the
Wow.
market sentiment is on these various topics.
This is the first time I hear about this, and to be fair, it's blowing my mind. I'm gonna research it afterwards. It's really
Sure,
interesting.
yeah. Well, then I'll also say get into the work of Robin Hanson. Okay,
Okay.
he's got to, of all the people I follow, he has got to have like some of the highest ratio of like, wow, that's a really interesting take or idea. Also, swings and misses some, so don't take this as an endorsement of everything he's ever said. But very interesting guy, and a lot of this was inspired by him, rather than as I said, yeah, like I'm regurgitating someone smarter than me. So, yeah. And then one other one I'll throw in is just like DAOs in general. Like, could DAOs end up being the sort of, the 21st century joint stock corporation?
Mhm.
I see a lot of what happens. I'm someone who is generally critical of regulation and its benefits and barriers that the state puts in the way of like markets and business. And so something that I think is sort of a continual battle might be overstating it, but like dynamic, let's say,
Mhm.
is that these barriers, whether purposefully constructed or accidentally constructed through genuinely good intent, end up getting, sort of routed around by entrepreneurs. And I wonder the interaction of like this blockchainified joint stock corporation and that dynamic of some of the ways in which the state has created these barriers. I just wonder what it's going to ultimately produce. And I think we're still in the early days of it.
I see. Well, thanks for sharing. These are both quite interesting topics, and really, no one brought them up. Really, usually we focus about interactive entertainment or a video game, and maybe I play a role in that because I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a gamer. I love the mixed reality promise. So,
Right. Well, if
um,
you like weird stuff like this, you can follow me on Twitter. I am Jeremy Kauffman. You can also follow me on LBRY itself, since you're obviously watching this there now. So you can follow me there too at KaufJ, KAUFFJ.
we're gonna leave anyway the link in description. Jeremy, thank you so much. I know that you have to go. Thank you so much for making the time and
Thank you so
meeting
much.
us.
And you asked really great questions. I love this interview. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And really, we hope to see you again. Okay.
You will. You will.
Stay in touch. All the best for you and library.
Thanks.
Talk soon. Bye bye.